I think the biggest goal, honestly, in the hobby is the goal that I wanted to accomplish was being able to do this full time. So there was a lot of pieces to that puzzle that I had to work on. So if I'll just put an X on that one, and probably within, my guess would be within a week or two. I don't expect to get 10 eggs every clutch. This is a, very well matured female, and so definitely gonna keep this female. Super asphalt, I mean, you can't go wrong with a super asphalt female. I think it was the summer of 2012. This was like June, July time frame. Well, Daytona, I found out, was in August. First show that I went to was Daytona.
Where I really remember meeting Corey is that same year, 15 or 16, Daytona, Thursday night at the Mixer. I remember he had a really firm handshake. He came over, he brought me a beer, which I thought was really rad of him. He's like, hey man, I got you this beer. My name's Corey Delong. And we started talking, and he told me, about nursing and about a lawn care business he did and about a structured plan that he had in place. Like, I want to get to here, and here's how I want to get there.
I met Corey Delong in Daytona, and Corey always looks like he's angry at me. And I come up and I'm trying to buy animals from him, and we're just chit-chatting. And the very next show, he's vending next to me. And I'm like, God, this is terrible. This guy hates me. And we actually got to talking, and I was like, that's just how he is. He just looks angry sometimes. And he even explains it to me. He goes, yeah, sometimes it's a little bit hard to approach me. And I was like, okay, that's understandable. And a lot of times people don't want to vend next to me. And I'll be honest, I told Corey, I'm like, hey, sorry, you're stuck next to me. Because people don't like vending next to me because he set up this huge setup. And sometimes I dress up ridiculously. And sometimes we can be a little over the top on what we do at shows. I understand it. And Corey said he had one of his best shows ever. He says, who cares? As long as people come up to the table and he has a chance to sell them, he was okay with it. So the very next show after Tinley, he ended up booking right next to me for Arlington, and he had a great show there too. So me and him have been vending next to each other for a lot of shows throughout these last few years because of that.
So the very first time that we met Corey was at the Daytona National Reptile Breeder Expo in 2021. And we had gone there and we were super, super excited because we were fairly new to the hobby. And we knew that we were picking up a snake. And the snake was the very first leopard sunset female that had ever been hit. And Brock Wagner and Brad Boa had hit her, and they had posted pictures, they had posted all that stuff of combos that they had hit like a couple months before the show. And we had reached out on Instagram pretty much saying that we wanted to buy that girl that they had hit, the leopard sunset girl, pretty much right out of the egg. So we ended up buying her, but we were gonna pick her up at Daytona. And right before the show, Brock ended up posting a picture of her to Instagram where Corey had commented on being like, I want that snake, no questions asked. And Brock had to say that he already sold her. So when it comes time for the actual show, we come up, and I'm super, super excited to get this girl because one, we're really new. Two, this is at the time the most expensive snake that we had purchased. I am absolutely stoked. I'm like shaking as I'm coming to pick her up. And we had actually recorded it so that we could use the video for our YouTube channel.
Corey here. Hey Corey, this is the guy who bought your son.
Brock mentions to Corey, because Corey vends right behind Brock, that we were the people who bought the snake that he wanted. So that's really how we got introduced to Corey. We started talking to him. We saw all of his animals that we had, and we just kind of talked about various different things. And Corey is such an amazing dude. He's such a good influence on the entire reptile breeding hobby. And overall, since then, we've vended next to Corey. We've gone out to dinner with Corey. Corey is a great dude, and I cannot say enough good things about him.
So this morning, while you guys are visiting, I come out here, and interesting enough, we just have a clutch laid overnight. And this is one of my older clown girls, and I bred her to an Enchi pastel yellow belly monarch het pied. So hey, I'm Corey from CD Constrictors. Started gathering, collecting ball pythons in 2012, kind of as an accident. Actually, my son was down here visiting for the summer and wanted to go into the pet shop, and we saw some ball pythons, and I had never had much exposure to reptiles at all. and he wanted to get one. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. You know, I've never really had any reptiles. And actually that day we ended up leaving with 2 animals. So he got one, and then I got one myself. And then talking to the owner at the local shop, he was like, oh, did you know if you have this, you know, you can make this? And I'm like, whoa, what are you talking about? And so he started to show me like different pictures. And of course, what started a lot of people, I think, is the blue-eyed Lucy. And so one of the animals that I'd gotten was a lesser.
The blue-eyed leucistic ball python was actually the very first snake that I ever got when I got into the hobby, and I think that they are some of the prettiest, most stunning animals in the entire reptile hobby. They are an all-white snake with these piercing blue eyes, and they get so many people into ball pythons because, again, they're just mind-blowing. And it's really, really interesting from like a genetic kind of perspective, because you can take 2 different traits, 2 different morphs that look completely unlike anything that would potentially resemble an all-white snake with blue eyes, and you put them together and you get a blue-eyed Lucy. It is absolutely wild, and it is no wonder that they were, when they very first were coming out, selling for $100,000 each.
So I had like a butter and a lesser, and I started growing those up. And in 2012 is when I found out that Daytona was in August. So I went to that show. I really wanted to get a super pastel female, and I really liked pieds. I think a lot of people, you know, the contrast, and this is a very popular morph back then. So I actually got a super pastel female from one breeder, and I didn't know how to sex very well back then. I was just starting, you know, it's a skill that's learned, you know, over a little bit of time. So I bought this super pastel and brought it back to my friend Anthony, and I'm like, hey, look at this, you know, and he checked it, and it was a male. So I went back to the table that I bought it from, and I'm like, this is a male. My friend just checked it out. And so I ended up going to another table. They took it back. I went to Family Reptiles. So if you know them, they're a big breeder down here in Florida. They have their own shop over in Lakeland. And I got a super pastel female from them that I had for several years, because back in 2012, that was a like cool animal to have. And then the pied that I ended up buying, I found one, was probably 400 or 500 grams, and I remember I paid like $750 for it. So not horrible, but you know, a decent expense back then. And then walking around, I ended up seeing this other one, this other pied female that was larger. And it was like $1,300. And I was kind of bummed. I'm like, man, this one is like 13. I could have had one, a nice big size one, you know, that would go a little bit, probably a year earlier. And I just asked the guy, I'm like, hey, I just bought this, and I know you've got this one on the table. And he ended up, I think I gave him like another $500 or $600, and it was Adam Chesla. So that's who that was. He took the smaller one and let me, you know, trade for the larger female, and she did end up going. I got her up to size, and she bred that year, because I got a male at the show at the same time. So, and that male was a proven breeder, so I didn't have any work to do with him, and that's really basically how I started out. So that was like one of my first clutches, was visual pieds, like pied to pied, and I bred that male to like some other females that I'd picked up, because after I got the first 2 or 3 and 4, and then, you know, it turned into 10 and then 20, and I used to have them over in this area of the living room, you know, and then I moved into a spare bedroom, which is now my office. It's like a 10 by 10 room, small office, and just had maybe 3 or 4 racks in there, some adults, and then that got to be a little bit big, and we moved out to an area in the garage, and then now I'm in a different area of the garage. So that's kind of just the progression that we did since day one. Let's see this girl, what she's got going on here. It looks like she's nice and done. Didn't ever think that it would be something that I could progress to making a living off and paying the bills. And I think it was probably around 2016, 2017. That's kind of when I connected up with Winston in that time frame. And I was like, this could definitely become a full-time, you know, hobby / business.
The things I like most about Corey is how he's incredibly intelligent, but he's also he's well organized and focused. Like I said, he has a lot of follow through. And the biggest things like that he's also very honest and straight to the point. I have a tendency to like people that are very straight to the point. It's easier for me to talk to them. And like from day one, I was very comfortable talking to Corey. And so we started to talk more and more, and I realized like, man, this guy is really paying attention at a time when my attention was being divided for the first time. It was about, so the first time I really talked to him a lot in abundance was 2015. I had my kids my twins, September 2014. And there was a lot of things happening in my life. It was the first time in 10 years that my focus was not just all on reptiles. And so it really stood out to me how much his was. And I gained a lot from that. It helped me kind of hold on and pay better attention to what was happening out there.
You know, you can do the math and figure out, oh, this is scalable, you know? So I was working as a nurse at the time, and also I had a landscaping business. So I was doing kind of three things. So I was kind of just doing the nursing 3 days a week, you know, 3 12-hour shifts, and then doing the landscaping by myself. I had like 40 contracts, and I didn't have any help with that. I tried to have, you know, one of my sons help me during the summer, but that didn't really always pan out. And then, so to help transition from that, it was 2018 in March, I sold my landscaping business. So we're looking at what, 6 years. And then in the fall of 2018, I quit nursing. So that's basically, you're looking at a 6-year time frame. To make sure it looks like all the eggs are out, and it does look like she's all set in that aspect. Looks like she's laid them all. So I just get a little tub. It's got some room temperature water in it, and I've already got a little chlorhexidine in there. And I'll just let her sit in there for a few minutes while I get this this clutch set up. I was using money that I got, you know, my nursing money and the money from the lawn business to reinvest in ball pythons, and bought from a lot of different people. I was buying from, I started out buying a lot of stuff from Mike Wilbanks. I don't know how I made a connection with him, but I just, you know, he's pretty big back then, and he had the Reptile ring thing going, and he was pretty visible on what social media there was back then. It's not like it is now, but definitely his website was cool. You could see pictures of everything that, you know, you might be interested in. And so he was one that had a website way back then, and it was active, and you could actually call and talk to him, and he'd answer the phone. And so that was pretty cool. And I started buying a lot of stuff from him. That's how I bought a lot of my clown stuff. So it worked out well. And then started getting into some higher end animals, I think in 2015 and 16. I started buying stuff from Justin. We had talked a lot before that, you know, about, I think, Enchipides is what we started talking about back then, because I had bought an Enchipide, and he was interested in those, and we kind of talked back and forth a little bit about those and what directions we were going. So I ended up buying, I think my first big purchase that I made was a leopard clown from him. So it's one of the first big things that, you know, he made into the clown. Just leopard was a pretty common gene, but nobody put it into clown, and that was pretty cool. And then just kind of progressed from there, you know, bought that animal and produced some and made some holdbacks to make clown pides. And just have to have your own little vision, I guess, on where you're going, what kind of things you want to do. It was kind of one of the first projects that I started recessive-wise, pides and clowns, clown pides. And I still do make a handful of them, you know, different combinations that I want. And finally, obviously, I have some of those clown pides that I've made that I'm expecting to lay eggs this year. So that's always cool to have animals that you've made, you know, that are laying eggs, which is not the first time, but the first double recessives that I've made that are, you know, going to be laying eggs. So first clutch of the year, and you know, it's it's definitely a double het project, and possibly, you know, with some testing, maybe some triple hets in here. So just kind of be really careful as with everything. And this is the first year that, you know, I've been working with monarchs breeding. So I've got 2 males that are breeding, So I really like that project. I've got a couple females that are pretty good size. I'm not breeding them this year, but they'll be ready for next year. So we have a season to think about what we want to do with those. They must have been pretty freshly laid overnight because they're coming apart rather easily. But we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. Looks like 11 eggs. So last year she gave me 10 eggs. I just looked at her sheet this morning. She gave me 10 eggs. I got 1 slug and 1 infertile egg. So 8 good ones that I was able to hatch. When I got in 2012, I didn't realize until maybe, like I said, 15 or 16, that was something that I would maybe want to pursue. So there's a lot of puzzle pieces to get to that point, because you know we all have bills to pay. That's probably one of the biggest challenges. Not only, you know, selling one business that I had, quitting a job, and going full time in this hobby, all within a year.
Sometimes the challenges of scaling up a business and then having, having like a few followers like look up to you or looking forward to what you're producing. Now you have that pressures of performing too. There's a lot of days where you wake up and if you're your own boss, you own the business, you can just go back and take a nap. You honestly, you don't have to be up at 8. You can go back in. You don't have to go down there and take pictures for Morph Market. You don't have to respond to that email right away. But you also have 3 other families depending on you. So then you're like, okay, literally it'd be 11 o'clock at night. I'll run down here and snap another picture for someone on Morph Market. I don't mind because it's in my house.
I had to, you know, kind of go from nursing, and like I said, I had my lawn business that I was working on, and helping Winston for a while, which ended up actually getting me to that point where I could say, sell the lawn business, and then peel out of the nursing job in the same year. That was a lot of pieces to a puzzle that had to get accomplished in order to get where I am right now. The day that I sold my lawn business, I celebrated with that guy. That was huge.
I think we mentioned this earlier at lunch, is that I'm so proud of the fact that the top guys in our industry are just normal people. And when people think about reptile people, they always think like this sleazy, I don't want to mention any type of person because there's that person obviously out there going to watch this video. But like a reptile person, you know, like when someone just envisions reptile person, and then you think, okay, well, who would be the best reptile breeders in the world? And they're thinking in their head. They never think Justin or Ozzy. You know, these regular guys, these very regular people. And the reason that I looked up to these guys always was I'm like, that could be me at one day, right? Because I'm just a regular guy. It didn't take, like, obviously they're very charismatic, they're good at their jobs, but it didn't take anything super special, right? These guys are not 6'6", not athletic and well-spoken, wear a suit all the time, didn't have $1 million to start off this business. So sometimes I look at that and I go, that could have been me, or that could be me one day.
I think one of the highlights that I had was probably vending my first Daytona show. It was 2014. I remember I vended, and remember I said that I'd bought a good handful of snakes from Mike Wilbanks. So I bought a pair of snakes from him that ended up producing a butter clown male. And so it was kind of interesting that at that Daytona in 2014, he ended up getting that butter clown male from me. Because he had one, but I guess he just couldn't get it to get up to size and breed for him. So he was interested in getting that. He got it from me, and so I thought that was pretty cool. You know, a guy that I bought stuff from, and that's what I like about this hobby is it's cool to be able to sell people animals, and then they produce something cool, and then you're interested in buying that back from them. You know, like I think that's one of the coolest parts. So many people are afraid to sell something to a competitor, you know, because they don't want them to beat them out, but maybe they've got a different vision than you have, and they make something and you're like, I'd like to buy that from you, you know? So I think that's a cool part of the industry.
We have to grow faster than the industry is growing. The unfortunate part is if you're watching what Justin, Miguel, and Ozzy and Brock, they're producing, it's like progressively every year is so much better than the last year. And some of these things is almost unbelievable, where I'm like, how have you even already produced that animal? And I'm just thinking about it right now. So every year, like I said, and we mentioned, we bring in about 10 or 15 or 20, whichever number of animals we bring in, is I have to go out there and find an animal that's so significantly better than what I currently have. The challenge of buying animals, it becomes real when you're like, okay, I can go out and buy a clown pie. That doesn't upgrade my collection at all. You know, I have to go buy something so ridiculous that most people wouldn't even sell. You know, I have to go in and be like, all right, where's Justin's holdback rack? But I need something from that. I don't want his regular inventory. So trying to like pry like these prized animals out of somebody, it becomes very difficult.
I've bought from Brock and Winston, when I started out as well. And then, I've sold them a handful of animals here and there, and we've done barters and trades on stuff, things like that. So I think and I've talked a little bit, jump into recent times, been talking a little bit on Will Morose's Discord about, there's so many projects that people want to work and we think are cool, and you don't have all the genetics to maybe make what you want to make. And I hear that you're doing something similar, like a collaboration. I think going forward, I think there's a lot of people that may get into some of these collaborations together to progress both of their collections. And I think it's a good way to, reach out and keep in touch with people and make new, friends. And I'm doing, one this year. That's pretty cool. Maybe when we take a step out there, I can show you that girl and what I did with that. But, somebody that I've talked and met with on Will's Discord, and we just chatted a little bit and decided to do this collaboration project together. And, she's about ready to ovulate, which is pretty cool. I have had some that, that they've been sitting for a day or so. Maybe I went away for the weekend or didn't catch the female the day that she laid. And they're really tough to get apart, and I won't even mess with them. I'll just take a tub of vermiculite and kind of put them in clump style together. I won't try to separate them, but these ones are coming apart fairly easy. Got the hard part done. And normally now what I'll just do is take and candle these things, because they end up hatching, And we'll just place her in there. Close it up. And that's really about it. I'm very happy with the shows that I do right now. I've done Schaumburg, that's a good show. I've done Arlington. I've had a little bit of hit or miss action there. I think that's probably common, Tinley has always been, a good show, and Daytona, believe it or not, every year has been my best show.
Looking at your own inventory, looking at your collection and judging, okay, do I need to vend Repticons or do I need to vend NARBCs? You have $5,000 animals. Your whole table is $1,000 and $5,000 animals. You should not be going to a Repticon. You're not gonna make any money. If you produce enough byproduct, you $300, $200, pretty looking pets that you can sell for $200, you go to a Repticon. I've seen guys, and again, I've done it myself, go to a Repticon and sell $300 animals, and you can sell 30 of them a show, 40 of them a show, and make a really good show.
Daytona is easily my favorite show, and there's a lot of different reasons why, but I think that the animals are oftentimes the first kind of wave of hatchlings that are coming out for a season, so you get to see all of the brand new stuff for the leading edge of the reptile hobby. In addition, it's not just ball pythons, there's lots of different reptiles, and I think that when you're comparing it to stuff like Tinley or other NARBC shows, I think that the National Reptile Breeder Expo actually really focuses on other species and not just ball pythons, so you get an insight into other stuff that's going on in the reptile hobby. And then last, and what I think makes Daytona stand out over all of the other shows, is that it is probably the best show for like networking and community building and just meeting people in person, because the venue has enough space where you're not feeling like that you are like claustrophobic and you're shoulder to shoulder with everybody else like it is at Tinley. And the fact that it's such an amazing location, it's literally right on the beach. There's so much stuff to do. You can bring your whole family down and they can just have a vacation while you're at the show. And again, there's no other experience like it in the reptile hobby. And overall, I think that Daytona is a cornerstone of the entire reptile experience, and that it is 100% necessary for every single person who wants to take breeding ball python seriously to go to Daytona at least once and really experience how incredible that show is.